Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm so excited to talk to you about something I'm very passionate about, which is teaching techniques. So in my previous video, I talked about living books and how important they are and integral to a Charlotte Mason education, but really truly should be a foundation for all educational philosophies, because living books are what teach the heart and the mind and is going to help you remember. If you haven't watched the video on living books, I highly recommend watching that before this one. But what do you do after you read these books? How can you help your children learn? Well, number one, you need to get rid of all the busy work. Those worksheets, fill in the blank, match the term to the definition. They are not going to help your children actually learn. They are something that we kind of dreaded when we were kids in school, and our kids dread them as well. It just feels like a waste of time and you aren't really learning. So what is the most effective way to teach and the most effective way to learn? Well, I'm going to tell you about 3 techniques that are going to make a huge difference in your school, and you can use them for any subject and for any age. So the first one is called elaboration, and Charlotte Mason called it narration, but pretty much it's the same thing. It's just telling back what you know and making connections to past knowledge. So you can do this after you've read a book. You just ask your child, okay, tell me what that was about. Or you can ask something a little bit more, that takes a little bit more thinking, which is, can you explain to me why the railroad was so difficult to build in the 1800s? Can you describe the process of a caterpillar changing into a butterfly? So you can use a lot of those words: describe, explain, tell me about, even justify. You can ask them, what does this remind you of? All of these things, all these ways that you're asking are going to give your child's mind a good exercise. They're going to have to reach through and grab past information and make connections. They're also going to have to learn how to summarize. They're going to have to learn how to synthesize information. It is an amazing exercise for the mind. It seems simple, but it's really powerful. And that is called narration, also called elaboration. The second thing is to have your children ask questions. Interestingly, we as teachers think that we need to be asking the question, and a good, well thought out, open-ended question is awesome to get your children thinking. However, when the mind thinks of a question, it is inducing curiosity, and it is making it so the child, or it's a desire to know. It's an indication that the child wants to know something. And Charlotte Mason said that we can't really know anything unless we've asked a question and want an answer to that question, which is an interesting idea. So you want your children to ask questions. And in the book Make It Stick, this is called generation, or in other words, generating questions. You could also have them generate solutions. So giving them a math problem that they haven't seen before and asking them to try to figure out the solution before you give it to them. So while they're doing this, they're asking a lot of questions like, how can I get this to work? How is this going to divide into this? They're asking themselves lots of questions. They're thinking, they're trying to problem solve. This is a much better workout for their mind than simply giving them the solution in the beginning. And so that is called generation. Asking children generate questions. You can do that while you're reading. You can do it after. A fun thing that my boys and I like to do is to ask each other a question and then answer a question. So going in a circle, each person asks the person to their left a question, and then they answer a question from the person on the right. And then just writing down all the questions that they have while they're reading. And that can be the basis of an essay or some other written narration that they're doing. Then the third, but not last thing, is called retrieval. This is a super powerful, very effective way for children to solidify knowledge. So retrieval is the term that is used in Make It Stick, but Charlotte Mason called it delayed narration and also exams. So delayed narration or retrieval is pretty much just asking children to remind you of what you read about in your last lesson. So let's say you're reading a book about history. Currently we're reading Greek history, and we read about Daedalus and Icarus. So I could ask my boys, hey, can you guys tell me, before we read the next chapter in our book, I can say, okay, can you tell me about Daedalus and Icarus? Or even just, hey, what did we read last time in our Greek history book? And then have them just explain what they read. Now, it's probably not going to be super great narration. They may be like, I think he did this, I think he did that. That is okay. It's like an iceberg. On the surface, you're only seeing a small amount, but the amount of thinking that's going on underneath the surface is a lot, and it's powerful, and it is strengthening their mind and their memory. So just remember that you're only going to see a little bit of what's happening underneath the surface when you do retrieval and delayed narration. So asking them to remind you of what happened last time, you can also ask them, remind me of what does this remind you of? That's going to help them remember things that they have learned about in the past and connect different subjects together, which is super powerful. So those two simple things, tell me what we learned about in the last lesson, as well as what does this remind you of? Those are good retrieval exercises. And then the last one for retrieval is called exams. Charlotte Mason did exams at the end of a 3-month term, and she only had a couple of questions for each subject. So for history, she maybe had three questions. One would be, tell me about a person you read about this term. That you could ask them what were some qualities that you admire. You could say, tell me your favorite story from history. And then as they get older, you could ask some more advanced questions like, can you explain blank? Can you explain how the Civil War started? Can you describe the Emancipation Proclamation? Hopefully you've read the Emancipation Proclamation in middle school and high school. You could ask them to narrate, what was this about? Explain or paraphrase or summarize, I guess, what that was about. So those are some exam questions. Now, they have learned this over the past 3 months, so they are being asked to retrieve that knowledge. You want to be constantly retrieving knowledge, because the more that you go down that path in your mind, the more your mind is asked to retrieve it, the stronger path to that knowledge. And so just asking them to remember things from the past 3 months, the past year, the past few years, by those very simple questions or statements is, tell me about what we learned last lesson, and then what does this remind you of? So those are the 3 things: narration/elaboration, questions, also called generation, generating solutions and questions, and the third is retrieval, which is delayed narration and exams. You can use these 3 for any subject, any age, and no matter what curriculum you are using. I use these 3 things in combination with living books as the foundation for our history, nature study, geography, and literature. If you have any questions about these or want to learn more about them, leave me a comment below. I am going to give you some links to the books that I recommend reading if you want to learn more, as well as the podcast episode that I made about these 3 things, going over the research that had been done, scientific studies, and all kinds of other good things on my podcast episode. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos.